In today's episode, we start putting the suspension back together.
Hello, welcome to Jerry Motorsport. I'm Jerry. Let's get started.
Okay, there's a collection of bits here to refit the new wishbone. So I've got to put new bushes in the arms where it broke. Before I do any of that, that spring seat's going to have to go in first. So I'm going to start with that. Okay, so spring seat's on. The instructions for this kit do say that this can be a bit tricky. You might have to wedge it in, so it won't currently go in and line up with the holes on the pan. Compared it to the original one, which is an absolutely identical pattern, and the old one's a little bit tight and won't quite go in. I think what I'm going to do is try and get the front bolts in and then push it down. It's pretty tight. So what I'm going to try now is just put one of these clamps, ratchet clamps on. Now that one's gone in. Get those holes to line up. A bit more. Just checked the old wishbone, and there is a slight dent just where this washer on this kit catches this flange. Okay, a bit of persuasive whacking. I should now get that bolt through, which I can. Okay, so that is the suspension shock absorber arm attached. So it's a slight dent there in that flange. I said the old one had done that as well. And then the shock absorber goes on here. Anti-roll bar goes on here. Pick up the bar below. Refit the bump stop. Alright, that's the shock arm stop. That's the bump stop. Right, before we put any components back together, I'm just going to protect the newly painted area with Dynax S. I have extreme duty anti-corrosion wax from Bilt Hamber, especially in these areas up here. Okay, I've been having a think about how this came apart, and the bushes, I think I should have taken them out through this hole, so I'm going to put them back in through this hole. So I'll put this one on the arm, and this one on the arm, and then put the other bushes through. Just splodge of grease on there, and lubricate this face that is going to be bearing to chassis, or sorry, bush to chassis. On this side, ready to go. The wishbone arm with the two inner bearings, keep calling them bearings, bushes fitted, just the two inner ones. So this goes in nice and easily. Then drop the pin through. Get that in the top hole. Let's just drop that side in. There we go. Now I want the tube to be well lubricated, so I'm just going to bush to metal, well lubricated. Okay, so I've got that lubricated up. I'm going to slide it along the tube, push it through the big hole, and then on the capped plate, just grease that up because I want that to move. So that needs to go on here. Put the nut on there. And I use the nut to pull that bush into position, hopefully. And it should tighten up as we pinch the cross tube. There we go. Right, I'm touching the cross tube, so just nip that a little bit. Let's see what we've done. I've got the bottom arm attached. And it works. I'm now going to put the arm in and we'll bolt it on. Okay, I'm just trying to refit that upper arm, and I'm finding that the bolts are just tightening up a little bit more than I'd expect them to before they've actually seated down. So I'm a little worried that there's a bit of cross-threading or something like that. So I'm just going to take off and make sure that the bolts go through. It's going again. There, you see that I've put those bolts in the holes, and this one is the one I'm having trouble with. Isn't quite straight. Equally, that one isn't particularly straight either. That one doesn't look too bad, and actually that's the one I got in the furthest. This one's just a hole through. This is the one you have to drill to get the kit on. So these are the standard 3 for the normal shock arm that the Frontline arm replaces. So they're the normal ones. This is the extra one that's just a hole, and then a bolt goes through to a nut on the other side. So that one's, I'm kind of ignoring that one at the moment. But you see, that one I'm a bit worried about, and these ones. So just going to see what happens with these with a tap. Okay, so I've got the die and I've got the bolt, and I'll just run the die along the nut. And the first part was really stiff. I've gone up it a bit now, and I can now finger tighten just about. So the thread at the bottom was a little damaged, so I'm just going to run that up and down a few times just to clear the thread. I'll do that on all the bolts, and then I'll put the corresponding tap into the holes in there. Right, that's the die run up and down those 4 bolts. One of them was really stiff, the others weren't too bad at all actually. So now I'm going to take the tap, I've attached it to a, it's not brilliant, but it's a screwdriver attachment for a ratchet set. It's just enough to hold it and turn it. It's not ideal, but it's a lot easier given the space that I've got in there to get this in. It's not too bad because I can turn it by hand. That's the problem, we're just slightly misthreaded somehow, or something got in the threads and has damaged it, made it a bit stiff. Okay, that's the tap run through there. You can see that's picked up a bit of debris. Just going to run this up the other 2, just to make sure we've got no other problems in the other holes. Actually, that one, which I thought wasn't too bad, it's gone very stiff. So that's the tap run in and out of the threads on the chassis. I've also done the dies on the bolts. So I'm going to now reattach the upper arm to the car. Okay, so I'm getting it quite, as you can see, it's quite loose. I'm just getting all the bolts started together, then I'll tighten them down because then they're already in the right thread orientation, hopefully. Everything's going in much nicer now. Now we'll just tighten these down. Now they're all supposed to have anti-seize copper grease on it, it says in instructions, so we've done that. Okay, 3 main bolts attached, so now I've just got to put the nut on the back side. I'm just trying to dry fit this assembly, so I've put the kingpin and stub axle in, connected up the track rod in, got the bushes in the end of the trunnion at the top, and I'm going to want to pop out all the time. The problem I've got is if I lift this up to marry it up, it hits. This is quite a few millimetres further forward than it needs to be, and it's like that bottom pan is twisted somehow, but I can't see how that's going to be twisted. So I might just slacken off the bolts, let things settle a little bit. I'll just keep it loose a bit, tighten it up, and then tighten the bolts up once it's done. Otherwise, I'm going to try disconnecting the kingpin end, attaching the trunnion end, and then reattaching the kingpin, see if that's going to work better. Okay, I've waxed this all up. What I'm going to do now is put the spring in, lift it up, jack this point up, try and fit these 2 between each other. Fitted the SuperPro bush on the top of the trunnion, copious amounts of grease. Get the bottom in so I can take the pressure off that spring. Right, either side of the kingpin we have these 2 cork washers to put in. A small one and a large one. A piece of metal sticking out, so it should be that way around. Now, the bottom of the kingpin should just snugly fit between the 2. Okay, that's got copper grease on it now. Let's just stop it seizing into that centre section. Right, let's just wiggle this a little bit. To get that trunnion pin in, cut down a bolt, small screwdriver shaped top to it. Use a socket, I should be able to get the pin in. Okay, my little tool's finished. I'll just ground it off, just check it fits in, and I can use this 19mm socket to it in. Okay, so I've got the bottom fulcrum pin in, but that has thrown off the kingpin to the front. So I'm just lifting one side the front end of the wishbone to try and rotate it a little bit, try and get it to settle down. And the kingpin doesn't line up with the trunnion at the top. It's very, very nearly there. I just need to sort of coax it into the hole and bring down the upper arm, but it's not proving very easy. I really don't want to damage this thread on the kingpin. Okay, I've got this almost on maximum bump. It's just starting to go in. There we go. There, settle down, good. So I'm going to put a nut back on the top here. There, that's getting very tight. Okay, now we're going to gently, very, very gently, take off the pressure from the spring. Hopefully it'll just settle down. Okay, car's going to come back down on its supports. That's the pressure off. That is the suspension, reassembled in the main anyway. So, okay, that did not go as smoothly as I'd hoped it would, but I have now got all the new suspension components in. All that remains now is to fit the new shock absorber. There we go then, the suspension is back in. I've got to put the rest of the components, obviously the brakes and things like that in there, but essentially that is the suspension back together, which took a lot longer than expected, but then these things always do. So we're going to leave it there for today's episode.
Thank you very much.
Right, well I've just finished the episode, or I thought I had, and I had a quick look, and I've fitted the trunnion around the wrong way. This has got to be at the back, with this in front of it, not behind it. So actually it's making the wheels lean top out, so I've got to strip the top down and try and get it back on again. Right, after that little mistake, we've sorted that out. We've now got the trunnion the right way around. It does happen, I have heard of it happening, and I've just made the same mistake myself. I was probably just so elated to have got the trunnion on that I hadn't noticed that I got it the wrong way around. Anyway, that's on the right way around now. So that really is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching. Bye.